If you don't know yourself, and by knowing yourself, I would say that primarily means knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, especially your weaknesses, because when you understand what you're weak at, you can augment. You can have people help you with that. You can ask for help. You don't have to demand help. You can say, this is a tough area for me. Jason, you're much better at this than I am. Can you take a look at this? You know, when you identify what your strengths and your weaknesses, and share that with your team. Don't hide it from your team. Share that with your team, and if you have the right people on your team, they will be eager to step up and help wherever they can.
Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Tomchick. Welcome to the Connected Mindset Podcast, where each week we bring you the stories to better connect with the world around you. Let's dive into this week's podcast. Bob Pizzini, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. It's awesome to be here to talk to you today.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. One of the ways we like to start the show off is what does the audience need to understand about the younger Bob to understand the Bob that's with us today?
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a lot about the younger Bob that shaped the Bob who's here today. The younger Bob was enamored with Jacques Cousteau, the undersea world, as a young man when I was like 12 years old. That led to certification in scuba diving at a very young age. That led to a career as a Navy diver, ultimately a Navy bomb tech. But that very early exposure to the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, first in black and white and then in Technicolor, was really what launched me into my entire professional life. Aside from that, I grew up playing hockey. I grew up playing a lot of sports like you did. Hockey was my primary sport. And although I took a long break from hockey throughout my military career, I came back to it, or it came back to me.
Yeah.
And the magic of the community, the magic of the sport, and the way it has enhanced my life, and the way I'm able, hopefully, to use the sport to enhance other people's lives through coaching and other things. Those are things that helped shape me early.
Yep.
I went to Catholic school for 9 years.
Excellent.
And so being chastised by nuns for that period of time probably did some limited damage as well, but overall it was a wonderful upbringing.
Yeah, we have similar backgrounds in that side of things. I went to CCD for 11 years and very similar experience. I think it helps provide structure. It helps you understand the meaning of faith in your life and discipline with the nuns and things of that nature and the way they go about it. I'm curious. On the show, we talk a lot about transition, and I see a lot of athletes transition, and we don't talk a lot about the similarities or the differences between athletics and the military. There's a lot of similarities, I'm sure: team mentality, integrity, communication. Do you see any differences between your hockey background and the military experience that you had? And
really not differences. It's like you said, the similarities are striking. They're remarkable. For example, in the military, you have your individual skill set. As a bomb tech, I've got to be able to navigate terrain. To get to the problem, I've got to have the skill set to search, locate, identify. But then I take that individual skill set and apply it in a team setting. So now everybody on that team has this skill set that they bring to the mission or the overall objective. And that is the exact same thing as really any sport that's out there. Yep. Again, hockey being my experience, but you have individual skill, team skill, and then the sense or the intelligence of whatever the activity is.
Mm-hmm. Do they train to that sense? I know on the baseball field, it was like our unspoken language was your ability to understand your environment. And it was almost inherent. Like it felt, you knew when somebody understood it and didn't understand it. Do you feel like that's trainable? And does the military train like athletics does?
For sure. Yeah. The military does train to that. It does take time. And I'm sure in baseball, it takes time as well. Because that sense, that awareness, this kind of omnidirectional awareness, you can have this narrow awareness initially and things kind of broaden over time. And that's really when you start to become kind of a master of the craft, as you will. Not that, hey, look at me and how great I am. It's, you're able to predict, you're able to prevent. You can stop bad things from happening. You can predict outcomes and be more effective.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think all of that probably translates into your business life as well. I'm curious of the transition you went through from retiring from the military. It seems like you went pretty quick into entrepreneurship, but was there a gap there? And what did the process for Bob look like to you almost have to reinvent yourself to some extent. Obviously you take what you know, you take what's in your skill set and try to apply it to the outside world. What did that look like? What things did you struggle with that people can learn from?
Sure. So I'd say the biggest struggle was learning how to spell the word business. And I mean that, kind of in a funny way, but it's also very real. In the military, we are all, eventually, if you're in long enough, you become very good at what you do. You become recognized as a subject matter expert. You're a professional. We like to be quiet professionals. We like to be good at what we do without having to tell people much about it. But the aspects of business, a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, a cash flow statement, pro forma, we really don't do things like that in the military, at least not in my special operations career. And we also hold our positions usually for 2 to 3 years, and then you move on to the next thing. I've owned my business now. We are in our 11th operating year. That's a long time to be in the driver's seat compared to my entire 26 years in the military, where you're changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. So after I retired in 2010, I spent 5 years educating myself on business. I spent 5 years developing a business plan. I spent 5 years, preparing a pitch, working with potential investors, understanding the banking industry. So the one thing the military did teach me is that it taught me how to learn. It taught me that I can learn very complex things very quickly, which is kind of the nature of Navy EOD, of Navy bomb tech. But I just applied that application of learning to business principles when I decided that I wanted to open my own business.
Yeah, that's excellent. Before we get into the leadership side of things, I'm curious from the mindset of defusing a bomb that could have catastrophic damages, and you have to be somewhat of the calm person in the room. I think about in my business in the cybersecurity space, we're called in when the fire is on for somebody's having a cyber attack, and they're like, you have to be the calm in the storm. And I'm sure it's the same in the bomb tech side. What were some of the things that stuck out to you as you were learning that area? Because they probably don't just put anybody that's qualified to be able to do that job. It's kind of something. It's almost like an essence you have, or a drive to want to be somebody who can still think when a bomb could go off.
There's some unique descriptors, I think, that describe bomb techs. We're all type A. And that can be a good thing and not such a good thing. But once we recognize and accept that we're all type A, then we can kind of let our egos go a little bit. The other thing is we are we're problem solvers, and so whatever problem we come up against, solving that problem is the only outcome. And that problem could be, how do we get from here to there? Or, this piece of equipment is broken, I need to augment it with something else. Whatever the scenario is, we're problem solvers. And we're risk takers, but the risk is measured and calculated. And at some point we determine that this is an acceptable risk. Yeah. And all of those characteristics 100% cross over into the business world. If you're running your business in what I would call the right way, right? You assess the risk, you accept it, or you mitigate it, before you make decisions and move out.
Yeah. So you were very interested in the undersea world. Did you start out as a swimmer or something of that nature, and then you went into the bomb tech area specifically?
Yeah. So when I enlisted in 1984, there was not a guaranteed contract for diver, SEAL, or EOD. I knew what a diver was, a Navy diver, because lo and behold, on my high school bookshelf in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was a book called Navy Diver, written by 2 former Navy divers. And these were like Pearl Harbor era divers, but nonetheless, the book and the stories they told, it was just a natural progression for me to go from this scuba diver to the Navy. I didn't know what a SEAL was. I didn't know what EOD was. When I came into boot camp, then I was able to take the physical test, run, swim, push up, sit up, pull up, do all that within the guidelines, and then you go on to dive school. After I was a diver for 3 or 4 years, then I discovered this thing called EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. And by this time, I had learned how to learn. In high school, I was not a star student. I was a BC student in high school, really, and so many people will tell you the story, especially in special operations. We just didn't really care that much about what it was we were learning. Mm-hmm. Now, when I have to figure out the mixture of helium and oxygen for a dive to 274 feet, I'm going to be good at that math, real good at it. Yeah. I'm going to know what I'm doing. And so the discovery of EOD and the application of EOD when it comes to search, locate, identify, render safe, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, any weapon system on the planet, it falls underneath our area of response. And we're highly trained in all of those things. So what I discovered after I was in EOD for a little while was this ability to learn. Mm-hmm. And it's not because, I have this big brain that just awakened. It's because of the systems and the people that brought these systems to the program that really allowed people to develop to their fullest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that ability to learn, what is that, like learning to learn? Like, how should people think about how they learn? I think that's
Yeah. So there's something I write about in the book. It's called metacognition, right? Thinking about thinking. Yeah. But to your point, however it is you learn, you want to be deliberate about it. So you want to say, hey, am I visual? Mm-hmm. Am I rote memory? Am I some kind of combination of all of that? And most people don't pay close attention to that. But if you practice or rehearse how it is you learn, you're going to learn better. And it's just that easy. And I'm in a program right now that is it's going to help me with what's called working memory. It's going to help me with what's called executive function. But these are very deliberate programs to sharpen. They can sharpen executive skills, which is kind of where I'm at. Yeah. But these programs were really designed for veterans who have been injured in some capacity, mm-hmm. and their executive function has been reduced. It's the same effect at the end of the day. You work on that skill, you sharpen that skill, and again, executive function, right? The ability to have working memory, loaf of bread, gallon of milk, pick up my son or daughter from school, yeah. Right? Do I got to write that down or can I remember it? Yeah. And then mental flexibility. We're going to go from work to play. We're going to go from sleep to awaken. We're going to go from activity to meal. All these kind of change-ups that we have throughout the day. And then discipline, self-control rather. Mm. Do I interrupt people or do I let them finish speaking before I'm going to say, what I have to say? So those are the components of executive function. Those are the things that people can become better at if they rehearse and train that particular. It's prefrontal cortex. You can train that particular part of your brain.
Interesting. I haven't heard that before. So there are programs out there that help you activate or enhance that area of the brain.
Exactly.
By doing, or are there training exercises that help you do it better and then you get...
Yeah, it's both. The training exercises are something that one would want to do with some frequency, some reoccurring basis. But then when the moment's upon you, you say to yourself, I'm not going to interrupt this person. You say to yourself, I have just transitioned from something very high speed and intense to something that's not. I'm going to lower my volume. I'm going to tone it down a little bit. So you consciously adapt to your setting and to your audience. Yeah. Is one example.
Yeah, that self-awareness piece.
Exactly.
How important, and I just see so many people out there that are leaders that don't really know themselves. They know their team better than they know themselves. And I see that in crisis when they're going through something that they didn't expect they would go through, it kind of crumbles. So how important, when you're leading your team or when you're leading yourself, how important is it to know yourself first to be able to lead in today's world?
It's critical. If you don't know yourself, and by knowing yourself, I would say that primarily means knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, especially your weaknesses, because when you understand what you're weak at, you can augment. You can have people help you with that. You can ask for help. You don't have to demand help. You can say, this is a tough area for me. Jason, you're much better at this than I am. Can you take a look at this? When you identify what your strengths and your weaknesses, and share that with your team, don't hide it from your team. Share that with your team. And if you have the right people on your team, they will be eager to step up and help wherever they can. And that's a beautiful team dynamic when you get to that level.
Yep. Yeah. It's hard to say what you're bad at because the ego steps in and, I'm leading the team. I need to be great at everything.
Yeah.
Where did you learn that ability to be more transparent? Because I think that's something that's undervalued a lot of times. Is just pure transparency. That's one of my core values as a person is, if I can be more transparent, the world around me is better and easier. So,
I think I learned that from the school of hard knocks, as they say. Every time I was egocentric, I kind of got hit in the side of the head, so to speak. And, people either learn from those experiences or they don't. One of the things I write about in the book is, I was in charge of a pretty significant military operation one day, and I made a mistake. I made a very deliberate decision that was not in alignment with the commanding officer's directive, and it bit me. And although I was egocentric that day, the reputation I had was not as somebody who was egocentric. So, two things, many lessons came out of that experience, but one is it really taught me to tone it down and, get on board, so to speak. You're more value. You bring the greatest value as a member of a team and not the guy who knows it all. Yeah. And the other thing from a leadership perspective is my leader at the time. He handled that so perfectly. I mean, he really could have made it painful, and he did make it somewhat painful, but he also provided a path for recovery. And again, that goes back to, it's another thing I write about is why are some people forgiven after making a mistake and other people are fired? And if you're egocentric and if you're self-centered, you're much more likely to be let go versus what happened in my case where I was ego-driven that day, but that wasn't my reputation. I was more of a lead from the heart, team-oriented kind of person.
Is there a way that you found to discover what you are and then what your people on your team are and how they need to be treated to feel empowered?
So there's these assessments, there's the DISC assessment and there's the Myers-Briggs and there's Strength Finder and this one called IX, which is really the one I prefer. Those have, in my experience, they have limited value because people come and go. You're looking for this wonderful team dynamic and then you do this wonderful assessment and you go, oh, I'm high D and you're high D and hey, we're just going to work great together. And then that person leaves. So I think what happens is, again, from a leadership perspective, you have to recognize those strengths and qualities in people on your team and not just recognize, you have to have deliberate discussions with them. Some people want to show up at 9 and leave at 5. And they don't want to be bothered with work before 9 or after 5. And that's fine. We need people like that in our organizations. Some people will say, hey, I don't care what time, day or night, call me, I'm on it. That's awesome too. I would be cautious in, exercising that very often because you will burn people out. Yeah. So there's, I call them pioneers, migrators, and settlers, right? And we need all three in our organizations. Your settler is your 9 to 5. Don't bother me outside of those hours. And within those hours, don't bring me anything shocking or alarming. I just want to do what I'm here to do. Yeah. And that's fine. So that's your settler. Your migrator is, they're newer on the team, but they're on the rise. They're eager to kind of move up to the next level. And then your pioneers are people who are, breaking through the ceiling, so to speak. And they always have these ideas, whether or not it's a good idea or not. is a different discussion. But the fact that people are thinking and trying to advance the organization is a wonderful thing. And that's another thing I'm big on is voice. I want to hear everybody's opinion. We don't put it up for vote. I call it voice versus vote. I've got to make the decision on who gets paid how much and how much we're going to invest in a marketing campaign and how much do we put into renovation or expansion of the facility. That's the leader's decision. That's not a vote. But I do want to hear from everybody in all cases.
Yeah. Can you have a team of pioneers? Because I feel like that when early on in my business career and journey, I just wanted other pioneers that were just like Greg because I thought that was going to be the best team. And I learned that the hard way. You kind of need the other roles and people that think differently. And it made me better when maybe I had more settlers where it was like, okay, they're kind of creating some stability where I'm kind of, can be all over the place and they're bringing me back down to earth. What does a team of all pioneers look like? Is that a toxic environment or is that?
Well, let's start out with the last thing you said. You need all three, right? Yeah. That balances out the team. It gives you stability. Even when you don't think you need it, it gives you stability. It's really a key part of any team. If you have all pioneers, who's unlocking the shop at 8 a.m. and making sure the floor is swept and we're ready to be open for business. So a team of, too many people moving too fast in, I would say, dissimilar directions, that can be chaotic.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've heard the saying before, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team.
Yeah.
So there's a blend there, and it's important. I have 40 people in my organization, 7 people on the leadership team. The leadership team is who I interact with the most, and understanding what they're looking for in the organization and what they want to contribute, and then giving them the opportunity to contribute at their level. That's really, I think, one of the most important things a leader can do. Of the 137 most important things a leader can do, that's one of them.
Yeah, it is quite a bit. It's a multidimensional role. It's a continual learning role as well, which I think it attracts me to it in that way. And hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by my company, Valor Cybersecurity, where we help defense contractors navigate the uncharted waters of cybersecurity compliance. As a cyber attack victim myself, I know the impact that this plays in people's lives, and at Valor, we solve that each and every day. If you're a defense contractor feeling frustrated and confused when it comes to cybersecurity compliance, visit valor-cybersecurity.com, take our free assessment, and get started on your journey to clarity in cybersecurity. One of the things I'm curious about are stories of people that you've led who didn't know what they wanted to contribute. And obviously it's the leader's role, job, to lead that person in a way to help them discover it potentially. But I've had, a few people throughout my journey who either they're chasing money or they think, cybersecurity is the next big thing. So they join it, but they don't really know what they want to do and what they want to contribute. Mm-hmm. So it makes it hard as a leader to sometimes lead those people to give them what they want or what they desire, or give them the opportunity that they have always wanted when they don't even know what they want. Do you have any stories or any examples that you can provide?
Yeah, I think what I can share there is, first and foremost, what we look for when we bring people on is moral and ethical character. And if somebody's moral and ethical character is well placed, they can do anything in the organization. And by anything, I mean, you just like having that person on the team. You feel comfortable around them. You feel a high level of trust around them. And maybe that person's going to be your highest producer, go-getter, pioneer, knocking out of the park. Maybe that person could also be a settler. That person could be somebody who, isn't good at whatever your main product or service is, but on the backside, they might have some niche skill that brings great value to the team. It's the leader's job to find out what that skill or that contribution is, what that kind of comfort zone and production zone is for that person. Yeah. And that gets into this performance versus behavior matrix. You can have Obviously in an organization, you want high performance, high behavior, right? High moral and ethical character. If you have those people on the team, you reward them, you task them, you keep them on the team. The opposite is also easy. If you have low performance, low behavior, how'd you even get here? Get out of here. Who hired you? You know, but when you have that high behaving, good moral and ethical character person who's coming up short in their performance, retrain, reassign, you know, find a way to retain that, because what I've discovered is moral and ethical character is really the gold standard of your teammates. So I think that it's incumbent on the leader to help that person find the sweet spot. Usually you will. There's only been one case in the last 11 years where I had somebody with great moral and ethical character and we just couldn't find the sweet spot. Yeah, only one time. And
I'm curious about this specialist to leader, because I feel like, you know, some leaders just they understand like all the pieces of the business, but I see a lot of entrepreneurs specifically that they start as a specialist in something. You know, I think about, you know, maybe they're doing logistics in the military and then they try to bring that into the private sector and learn that, you know, probably less than a third of the business is actually doing the logistics. It's more about understanding the business, investors, customers, marketing, all of these other things. What do you think leaders specifically struggle with when they are specialists and they have to kind of become the leader of others in that specialty, that may not do it the same way that they do? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs that I hear from are facing that. And I faced that initially, where I was like, I'm a cybersecurity expert. I have a little bit of leadership experience from sports and the teams that I've led, but now it all comes back to me. And I have to learn way more than I thought I would need to learn than just doing my skill or my craft really well. What do you think people struggle with most there?
Yeah, so I think that is such a relevant question, because most entrepreneurs, right, they are the subject matter expert. They deliver the product or service as they establish their business. And as soon as you hire your first employee, you're now a leader. Yeah. That person is looking to you for leadership and guidance, both technical and general, you know, workplace etiquette, so to speak. And, you know, I worked with this landscaping company, two young men who just had wild success in the landscaping business. It went from the two brothers to 40 employees, and they had no concept of leadership whatsoever. They couldn't keep people on the team. They couldn't organize and task organize. And so I think that whether you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or you are up and coming in a larger organization, you have to pay attention to leadership development. It doesn't happen by accident. And the larger organizations, you know, the Verizons of the world and the Googles, I mean, they have these leadership continuums. They have it all figured out. The military expects you to advance in your leadership capacity every couple years. And there's a continuum, and there's schools, and there's job assignments, and there will be failure, and the military expects that failure, and they help you recover and retrain and get back out there and do it again. You know, you hear the saying, failure is not an option. In the military, when leaders fail, very rarely do they get fired. They get retrained and put out there to do it again. And it's a wonderful model, actually. It's one that really helped me, you know, find success in my private sector life and in my military career. So it's incumbent on individuals to recognize the need for leadership development, and the earlier, the better. You know, when you're 18, 19 in the military, you finish your basic training, you go to some level of leadership training. And then you go to your next technical skill set training, and then you go to the next level of leadership training. It's just the way the model works.
Was there anything you took away from understanding how people, just the general humanity, civilization, how they operate, how they think about things, how to make sense of it, just how people think? And
so there's, you know, you can take a scientific approach to that and say, well, there's linear thinkers, you know, and there's nonlinear thinkers, you know, and There's logical thinkers. Think of engineers, for example. Like every engineer in the world is a very logical and lineal thinker. And, and I've worked with engineering companies. And then there's people who, think outside the box is, what we hear said often, but it's a different approach to things. It's like Trump saying, why are we doing the same thing for 80 years in Gaza? Why don't we make it a Mediterranean paradise? People laugh at that, but that kind of thought process led to, a major breakthrough here in the last couple of days. But there are, and when people come to you with some of these out of the box ideas, it's really important to, number one, embrace the offering, evaluate the offering, and, make the decision whether or not to let it happen. But you have to look at some of our greatest inventors, people who were thought to be crazy at one point and then came up with these incredible things. Steve Jobs, Apple Computers, just so many examples of people who thought non-linearly, I guess would be the way to say it, and made tremendous breakthroughs. And that happens in organizations large and small.
Yeah, I can visualize this window, like with the landscaping example you gave, where you have somebody who's doing something great in the world and they're growing at a rapid pace, but they start to feel that kind of, I call it leadership debt, or like they start to feel that debt of, I don't know enough to feel qualified to lead this person in that moment. Between those two windows of feeling like you need to be a better leader and then actually being a better leader in action, what does that process look like? What type of training do you think about somebody doing? Or obviously some of it is on the job training and some of it is, classroom training or exercises. What are some breakthroughs that, people can look for or outlets?
So I think what happens over time, right? We have, depending on where you are in your leadership journey in your organization, depends on how much credibility you have and how much your people are willing to let you lead. Ideally, they should 100% enable you, follow you, right? So I have another story that I tell where I need 100% from people on my team. Like, if you're going to give me 75% or 80% or 95%, that's not enough. And if you can't give your leader 100%, then go work for somebody else. Go work for somebody who you can give 100% to. So it is an all or nothing equation when it comes to that team dynamic. So require 100%. Give, even as a leader, you give your teammates 100%, right? So we have that expectation in the workplace. That takes time to establish. So when I feel like maybe I'm coming up short or I'm in a situation that's a real leadership challenge, trust doesn't break down. The bond doesn't break down. People don't walk away and say, he's on his own, so that's a bond that has to be built over time, and it really has to be maintained every single day. Yeah. And if you can establish that, you can overcome some seriously challenging situations. But again, that's a very conscious and deliberate thing that you think about every single day. I think I mentioned I have 7 people on my management team. I think to myself, what am I going to do if this person decides to leave or that person decides to leave? Highly valued teammates, outgrowing the organization, really. Their star is shining bright and they have great career opportunities outside of my organization. And really my job as a leader is to help them flourish. It's to help them go wherever it is they want to go. But when that person says, here's my 2 weeks or here's my 30 days, I should have already thought about that rather than be surprised by it. And I had this happen recently in my organization. 2 of my absolute superstars, one had been with us for 10 years. She helped put the building together. Yeah. And the other one had been with us for about 8 years. And within a couple months of each other, they both moved on to bigger and better things. But I worked through some of these scenarios, not this one specifically, like them both leaving within a couple months of each other, but I worked through scenarios and I talked to some other folks on the team and hey, how would we handle this? Could we do this? Could we do that? So this kind of thinking ahead and, game theory or war gaming, kind of, the scenario based kind of walkthrough, if you will.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned an interesting point on trust in the leader, and then the leader's ability to trust that the team's giving 100%. How important has that trust been to you? I think about the critical pillar to trust is consistency. And I see a lot of leaders, and I've been somebody that has done this in the past. Because I'm working on multiple things, sometimes it's hard for me to be consistent every day, to be the same person every day, because I'm evolving. So maybe, and then other people feel that change. So that can kind of question, like, oh, is Greg not as interested in, in grooming me or teaching me today? Because he's working on something else. So how do you kind of continue to build the trust that's needed to make sure that everybody's giving 100%, even though there's moving priorities?
So there's two things that are critical to the scenario you just laid out. One of them is as much as you can be the same person every day. Mm-hmm. Because if you're the same person every day, that's what fosters trust. I can go, and again, I tell a story about this in the book. Somebody can come to my office and say, Bob, you're not going to believe this terrible thing that happened. And my response is, really? Tell me about that. Mm-hmm. Or that same person will come to my office and say, Bob, you're not going to believe this incredible thing that happened. And I'm going to say, really? Tell me about that. Yep. They get the same person every day. You'll get more trust out of that than anything else, as opposed to, stay away from Greg today. Yeah. Apparently he didn't eat his Wheaties, or, the Cubs must have lost, or, but he's having an off day. Stay away from him. You never want to be that person. Yeah. And if that's the kind of day you're having, stay home. Don't put your team through that. Mm-hmm. So you want to be consistent. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, and I'm surprised I haven't mentioned this yet, is communication. Mm-hmm. If you're having an off day, if you're not going to be the Greg that everybody expects, then share that with some people. Hey, I didn't sleep well. Problem with my child at school. I'm a bit distracted today. Can you help me with this? I'm a bit distracted today. Or can you handle this for me today, because I've got to not be here today, or I've got to go take care of this or take care of that. That level of communication, if you open up and share, don't make people guess, wonder what's wrong with him. Yeah. Open up and share, and it's pretty cool. Quick story. So my sales and marketing office, you've been in our building. My sales and marketing office is next to my office. And at one point I had 3 young ladies working in there. And I watched this movie the night before, and there was a song. It was Don't Call Me Angel in the Morning, mm-hmm. right? You know how sometimes you just hear the song and you just play it like 10 times in a row. It's like, oh man, I just like that. So I came in the next morning and I'm playing that song like 10 times on my computer, and they hear me play it like the 10th time and they're like, what is wrong with him? And finally, but because of the beauty of communication and the high level of trust, one of them came in and they go, are you okay? Like, you've played that song 10 times in a row and that's not your kind of music. And so that communication is really critical. Yeah.
And I think it's self-sustaining on the team, but it's our responsibility to communicate it before somebody starts to feel it, I think is important.
Exactly.
Get out
right.
in front of it.
Yeah. And there's a whole, there's all these other, they call them microaggressions or, blind spots and all these other things. And I'll just give you a quick example there. I was walking across the flight deck at iFLY one day, and something was on my mind. Mm-hmm. Apparently my gaze caught the gaze of one of my teammates, one of my instructors. And I just kept walking, went to the stairway, went on with whatever I was doing. And 5 minutes later, his supervisor is up in my office going, why are you not happy with him? Or why did you give him that look? And I was like,
interesting.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, he said that you looked at him like you were angry with him. And I don't even remember seeing the guy, to be honest. Great teammate, wonderful young man, but I don't even remember that encounter at all. But thank goodness he went to his supervisor and said, what did I do that's got Bob mad at me? Or at least that's the impression he got. And that supervisor came up right away. So that misunderstanding was diffused in 2 minutes, as opposed to him going to the water cooler and saying, "Did you see that?" And, festering this thing that was never a thing to begin with. So, a good, robust communication, and it takes trust to have that communication. And the leader has to build that trust across the organization.
Yeah, those types of events can spiral for long periods of time, because maybe he builds a grudge. He's like, what did I do against Bob? And then he starts to say, oh, did I not do this right? And then, starts underperforming. And so I think that it's like, quick to action. And it sounds like you've kind of put that into your organization to be, to have a chain of communication, but be able to be quick to action to say, oh, is Bob mad at me? And then somebody goes and says, Bob, are you mad at him? And you're like, what do you mean? Nothing happened.
Yeah. No, and that's, again, that's just a high level of trust and a high level, that supervisor knows that no matter what I'm doing, they can come and walk in my office and say, hey, it's important that we talk right now. Yeah. And I will drop what I'm doing and listen with my eyes, right? That's what my daughter said to me when she was like 5 years old. I'm on the computer and she's pulling my arm going, Dad. She's like, listen to me. And I'm looking at the computer screen and I go, I'm listening. She goes, no, listen with your eyes.
Interesting. That's intelligence. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. If you're not looking, you're probably distracted by whatever your eyes are looking at. Just
exactly.
All the incoming.
Yeah. So that's one of my little idiosyncrasies is I try and listen with my eyes.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's a good thing for people to follow. So when you're writing the book, what are some things that, you learned that you didn't know before you started writing the book that stick out?
One of the main reasons I wrote it was really the theme of health and wellness as it applies to leadership and ultimately as it applies to your team. And it's part 2 of the book. And it part 1 is the art of leadership. And it's these principles of leadership styles and power types and having a personal definition of leadership and having these critical traits of a leader and these tools that you can use that are in your conscious mind. That's part 1. Part 2 is health and wellness, and it's all about the physiological aspect of you and how you care and feed for that and how you use that to be a good leader and to advance the initiatives of those you lead every day. And I break that down into 6 things: rest, hydration, nutrition, exercise, brain and heart link, and lifelong learning. And these are 6 things that you can pay attention to every single day. Rest. If you're not getting rejuvenating, restful sleep, do something about it. If you are, keep it up, right? We got to wake up well rested. When we're resting, sleeping, our brain and heart are communicating as frequently or more frequently as your brain and heart communicate when you're awake. That is, again, when it comes back to executive function and decision-making and things of that nature, rest, critical, hydration. How much, and when I do the Elevate Your Leadership courses, I love this because most people don't know the answer to how much water should you drink every day, and then how much water do you drink every day? Most people don't know the answer to either one of those questions. And if they know the answer to one, they don't know the answer to the other. So, but if you're not well hydrated, that could put you 1% off of your A game. Not well rested, not well hydrated, not well nourished, 10% off of your A game. It has you missing something or making a decision you later regret. So the motivations for me to write the book was really part 2, health and wellness, and how we care and feed for this machine, and how that really enables the highest level of leadership. And then I also view things in mono, stereo, surround sound. So how am I enabling health and wellness for myself? And then how am I making that available for those I lead? And that's critical. And that comes right out of my special operations career. We PT'd every single day, usually as a unit, very, very rigorous physical training. And that creates neuroplasticity. It makes your mind work better. It makes your executive functioning work better. And when you put that in a team dynamic, now you get a real high-performing team.
Yeah, I know as an athlete, the post-athletic life a lot of people drop all the things they learn. I don't know if this happens from the military, but the training that we did was to do the mission, right? It was to be on the field and be able to perform at a high level. But when people transition out, there's no longer that physical mission. They look at it all as mental, and they don't realize how much the body impacts the mind. Because, when they look at themselves as an athlete, they just look at the physical, and then they are kind of trained on the mental, the playbooks and things of that nature. So I think there's a huge gap when it comes to leadership. Most people just talk about the cerebral, the psychological, the strategy, the tactics to go about leading a great team, but they never talk about the vessel that actually performs those things. So I think it's a huge gap. I think it's something that I haven't seen much of, is people talking about how important the health side is to the actual doing of the leadership.
It's huge. And, to summarize it and make it really easy, I want to have high energy that lasts throughout the day. I want to have physical energy and mental clarity that lasts throughout the day. How many times is it 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, we hit the wall? It's like, man, I can't keep my eyes open. I just had that big cheeseburger. And, you're done for the day. And then you got this important decision to make at 2:30. And by 2:30 the next day, you regret making that decision because you were not in a state of high mental clarity. And mental clarity and physical energy go hand in hand. And the science behind that is just rock solid. And I write about that a little bit in the book as well. But if you want to make the best decisions possible, if you want to have the best situational awareness, if you want to be able to identify risk quickly and accurately, then it takes attention to health and wellness, because ultimately, the functioning of the brain depends on how you fuel and how you care for the body, and vice versa. It's just the way the human being was designed. And the other part of that is, in my experience in military, is a great laboratory, if you will. I look back over my career and some of the leaders who were very good leaders and some who were not so good, but people who maintained health and wellness throughout their career are generally still thriving in whatever it is they're doing.
Longevity.
And people who haven't, I would say generally are, they're accepting conditions rather than creating conditions,
Yeah. And they're in the passenger seat versus the driver's seat.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And, it can, you can get burned out and you get physically and mentally burned out if you're not taking care of the machine.
Absolutely. Bob, before we get to the final question, where can folks connect with you? Check out your book, check out your programs.
Yeah, thanks. So robertpizzini.com, that's robertpizzini.com is my website. And our programs and our events and our offerings can be found there. Contact form is there. And then the book, Elevate Your Leadership, obviously available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and I have a link to it at robertpizzini.com as well.
Yeah, and you have a show as well.
I do. I have a podcast called Elevate Your Leadership, and that can be found on the website. It can be found on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Elevate Your Leadership, and I'm on Spotify and Apple Podcast and all the same outlets you're on. So
Excellent. It's been a great discussion. A lot of lessons learned. I'm sure there'll be questions from the audience, so they'll have a way to get in contact with you. One of the ways we like to kind of wrap up the show is we're all about kind of connection, making sure you have the ability to have a connected worldview versus a separate worldview, and making sure people can kind of listen to different stories and connect to things that are going to help them have that next breakthrough. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what does the word connection mean to you?
There's a lot of ways I could describe that, but first and foremost, I would say connection means not being alone. Mm-hmm. It means that whatever you do for the greater good, you're doing it as part of a larger organization. Even if it's your organization that you're in charge of, you're still doing your part within that organization. There are times and places and things maybe where you do want to be alone. That metacognition, introspection, trying to hone a particular skill, but connection means a group effort to accomplish whatever the objective is.
Yeah. I love it. Bob Pizzini, well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you're feeling more connected from this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with someone that you care about. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Connected Mindset Podcast.